He looks like a man, but he thinks like a child. Not because he can't grow up, but because he refuses to. Carl Jung called this the Puer Aeternus, the eternal boy who never leaves the fantasy of who he thinks he is. And the longer he stays there, the more dangerous he becomes to himself and everyone around him. He avoids deadlines, deflects blame, crumbles under pressure, but he isn't weak. He's addicted to freedom without consequence. Carl Jung called this Puer Aeternus, Latin for eternal boy. A man who lives in a permanent state of emotional adolescence. He may be clever, talented, even charismatic, but deep down, he's terrified of becoming ordinary. Because to him, adulthood feels like death, not physical death, but the death of fantasy. He refuses to cross the threshold into manhood, because on the other side of that line is limitation, responsibility, failure, commitment, boundaries, and boundaries are his enemy, because they shatter illusion. Jung believed the Puer Aeternus suffers from arrested individuation. He's stuck in the early phase of development where the ego is inflated, where he's the center of every narrative, where life should bend to his desire, not the other way around. This isn't just immaturity, it's identity built on escape. The man-child creates elaborate rationalizations, that he's misunderstood, that others are too rigid, that society wants to trap him. But what he's really doing is hiding from the truth. He doesn't want to grow, because growing means loss of comfort, invincibility, fantasy. He wants the prize of manhood, without the pain of becoming one. So he stays in the space between, old enough to appear capable, young enough to dodge the cost, and everyone around him pays it. He never says he's not ready, he just keeps the door slightly open, forever. In relationships, the man-child avoids depth by performing intensity. He'll talk about fate, use poetic language, claim that you just get him, but ask for consistency, and he disappears. Emotional intimacy feels like a trap to him, because it demands self-awareness, accountability, and sacrifice. So instead, he offers promises, big ones, followed by silence. Jung would say he's living in the inflated ego, a phase where the self is ruled by idealized potential, not grounded reality. He sees himself not as who he is, but who he could be, if only the world gave him space. That illusion plays out at work too. He resents structure, misses deadlines, chases the next big thing, but rarely finishes what he starts. Jobs are either beneath him or limiting his creativity. It's never about effort. It's always about how the world doesn't understand him. To the outside, he may look like a rebel, a visionary, a misunderstood genius, but dig deeper, and you'll find someone running from the weight of the ordinary. Because to take root, to settle, to build, would mean sacrificing the fantasy of becoming someone great, so he floats, not forward, not backward, just high enough to avoid real impact. Even his identity becomes slippery. He reinvents himself often, a new belief system, a new cause, a new philosophy, not from growth, but from avoidance. Because committing to one path would mean rejecting all others, and rejection feels like death to the eternal boy. He doesn't want to choose, because choosing means growing up. And growing up means admitting that some doors must stay closed, forever. The man-child believes freedom protects him. But it's the thing that keeps him stuck, because when you refuse to grow, you don't stay free, you just become lost. Emotionally, the man-child is in a quiet war, not with others, with himself. He lives in constant contradiction, wanting love, but fleeing intimacy, wanting meaning but avoiding effort, wanting to be seen, but terrified of being known. It's a slow burn, a background sadness that never leaves. Because deep down, he knows he's behind. He watches friends grow, love, fail, rebuild. He watches the world ask more of him. And he pretends not to notice, but the grief builds. Carl Jung believed that when the Puer Aeternus stays dominant for too long, the psyche begins to split. On the surface, charm, creativity, charisma; underneath, guilt, fear, shame. He may joke about never being the marrying type. But what he's really saying is, I don't know how to let someone close enough to see who I'm not. This fracture doesn't just hurt him. It hurts everyone around him. Partners feel emotionally abandoned. They're pulled into cycles of promise, followed by withdrawal. They feel blamed for expecting normal things: honesty, consistency, presence. And over time, they become caretakers of his ego, soothing his fear of being trapped, tiptoeing around accountability, lowering expectations to avoid conflict. That's the hidden cost. Others shrink themselves to make his freedom feel safe. And when it all collapses, as it always does, he doesn't reflect, he moves. To a new job, a new city, a new person, still convinced that this time, it'll work, because this time, nothing will be asked of him. But there's one thing he can't outrun: the self he's refusing to become. For most man-children, change doesn't come from reflection. It comes from collapse. A partner finally leaves. A career falls apart. The charm stops working. The silence is no longer tolerated. And for a moment, the fantasy fractures. This is the edge of something Jung called individuation. The process of becoming whole by confronting what we've avoided. But most never get that far, because to grow, he'd have to face everything he's denied. That he's not special for refusing to commit. That escaping pressure isn't rebellion, it's fear. That freedom, without direction, is just drift. This is the death of the illusion, and it feels like identity loss. Because the man-child has built his self-worth on who he might become, not on who he actually is. Letting go of that story feels like dying. And in a way, it is. That's why so few make it across. The path to manhood isn't paved with applause. It's paved with surrender. He has to give up being the exception. He has to stop blaming the world. He has to feel what it means to be average, flawed, scared, and still show up. Jung warned, you cannot become conscious without pain. Growth is not a glow-up, it's ego death. And the man-child's ego was never built to die. Some will cling harder, double down on denial. Trade partners, cities, beliefs, anything but look inward. But for the few who stay with the discomfort, something begins to form, something quiet, something real. Not a better version of the boy, but the beginning of a man. The illusion of endless time, the excuse of potential. The safety of not being responsible for anything real. To become a man is to stop performing one. It means becoming solid, present, accountable. It means letting someone down, disappointing people, failing, and not running from it. It means telling the truth even when it ruins the fantasy, and staying when everything in you wants to escape. The boy has to die, not the physical boy, but the version of you that thought adulthood meant losing yourself. Because that was never true. Jung believed that the person who refuses to grow doesn't just pause their life. They invite the unconscious to take over. And what the ego refuses to face comes back as fate. So the question is no longer, will the man-child grow? The real question is, what does he become if he doesn't?